Josh and Barrett flying high like two lesbian seagulls, as usual. And we've got the man of the hour, Mr. Danny King from It's Just Two Movies here to help us tackle CRONOS on its 30th year anniversary. How we doing, Danny?
Oh, doing good, man. Doing good. Just happy to be here. Happy to be getting intoxicated on a Thursday night and happy to talk about anything that Guillermo del Toro makes.
100%.
Absolutely.
In the same driver's seat, my friend. And so, we, of course, are going to be talking about Guillermo del Toro's 1993 horror classic CRONOS, starring many folks that you may or may not be familiar with. Federico Lupi, Ron Perlman, more prominently, and probably you're more familiar with, Claudio Brook, Marguerite Isabel, and Tamara Zanath, I believe is how you pronounce her last name.
Yeah.
But before we get deep into that discussion, we want to catch up with Danny since the last time he's been on the show. Now, Danny, I think you are actually technically our third most visited guest to the show, just behind Doug Wicker now. So you own that honorary title, second place of most frequent guest to the ATI podcast already. Some awesome contributions.
Yeah, I'll have to kill him now.
We're going to have a showdown.
It's like Highlander. There can only be one. So
no, I love Doug. He's doing great. Doug, if you're catching this one, by the way, congratulations on your wedding. It looked lovely. Thank you for not making me go. Appreciate that.
Yes.
The pre-reception thing was lovely, but, I don't really want to. Nobody likes going to weddings, do they? Does anybody like, oh, fuck yeah, I can't wait. You guys?
Depends.
Yeah.
I will say. I've been to actually some banger weddings, and I've been to some pretty atrocious ones. I'd say the majority of the time, no, I do not like going to them, but I've been to a few friends' weddings that were absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it's
really
like...
good ones. I think I've been to two, but...
yeah.
Yeah, it's just usually not my scene. Too stuffy.
I think it has a lot to do with like whether or not it's like religiously heavy or it's like secular too. I will say for me, if you're going through like a fucking Catholic wedding and it's you go through all the hoops and what have you.
Now I officiated a wedding one time for my friend Anthony, and his wife, her grandfather is a pastor at a very like hellfire brimstone Pentecostal church. Mm-hmm. And he came up to me after the wedding and was like, wow, this is fantastic. Like, you're great. Where do you do your sermons and stuff? I'd love to come see you sometime. And I was like, oh, I'm atheist now. Sorry.
I love it.
I just, they said they wanted a religious wedding, so I gave him a lovely religious wedding. But that's very kind of you to say. And he just, give me the stink eye all night long. It was awesome.
That's excellent. Yeah.
He was not happy about that because it was like, it's her grandpa. Surely, and he is a preacher. Surely they would ask him to do it. No, they got me. They're just out there, just Jameson coming right out of my pores, so fucking hungover. I stole the Bible from the hotel room to put my notes in. Oh, it was very classy. Yeah,
very, very nice. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. So, did you make some like homages and religious references just to be kind in the sermon, or did you keep it pretty secular?
No, I gave him a straight up. In the beginning, God thought that it was not good that Adam was alone. So he created Eve by plucking a rib from his fucking. I gave him the whole. I took him all the way, baby. Yeah,
you took him to the brink of climax and let them finish themselves.
That's right. Yeah, they sure did in the stands. It was the wettest wedding I've ever been to.
Tongues shaking and all, baby.
Oh yeah, that's my type of wedding. All right, so before we get into the deep dive of Chronos, we're going to catch up with Danny here a little bit more so and talk a little bit about his show. It's Just Two Movies, which is one of my favorite podcasts to listen to. Doing a podcast of your own, unfortunately, you don't get as much time to dedicate to listening to podcasts as you would like, but I would say it's definitely in my top 5 rotation. And a couple of podcasts that I caught in the last year, at least since your last appearance, which has been about 10, 11 months, that I really enjoyed. I loved the fact that you guys covered Under the Silver Lake, and then you paired that with The Skulls, I believe, right?
Yeah. That was a fun one to do. As somebody who I'm not saying I don't believe in any conspiracy theories because that's insane.
Sure.
Some of them for sure are true. But I have, me and Birdman, he's one of my common co-hosts, we have a mutual friend that he very much likes conspiracy theories, like a lot of them. And boy, we were just watching both of these movies, just cracking up. Like, man, I wonder what he'd say about this. But it was weird because Under the Silver Lake, though, I did quite enjoy it, and I can confidently say 100% that movie not for everybody.
For sure.
But it is weirdly divisive. How many people are like, "Oh, I love this film," and then, "Oh, this film is like absolute fucking garbage."
You either love it or you hate it. For sure.
I quite enjoyed it. I thought there was a lot of fun to be had with it. Is it weird? Yeah, it's fucking weird for sure.
Definitely.
This week we're getting ready to cover. Tomorrow, actually, we're going to be covering Infinity Pool.
Nice, very nice.
Which is also super fucking weird.
Yes.
You know. Am I saying it's a good movie? Honestly, I don't know. Is it worth a watch? I think so. If you like cinema, it's worth checking out.
Right. Well, Brandon Cronenberg, son of David Cronenberg, of course. And everybody that listens to this show knows that that's my favorite director of all time. Brandon is kind of cut from the same cloth, you know.
Yeah, I really like both of I really like a lot of both of their work. But that is one of those things that I'm like, if you're really into Cronenberg, that's a thing that you get to keep for yourself because that's not for everybody. You know what I mean?
Yes, I agree.
Got some fucking bizarre approaches, and some people it works, some people it don't.
Yeah, it's definitely not for the masses, I will say. Yeah, so covering the Under the Silver Lake, I really love that movie. I mean, it was done, of course, by the guy who did It Follows, number one. So that was a good reason to let's see what his follow up is going to be, right? Secondarily, I love Andrew Garfield. And thirdly, it had kind of that weird kind of gumshoe beat to it that Kiss Kiss Bang Bang did in a way, almost like a Shane Black, but it was like a way more aimless. But that was kind of a part of the charm of the movie, though, too. And
I like the way he did. I like the way he did It Follows, and then essentially the follow-up film was just I Follow.
Right.
Just a paranoid guy who's just like, what the fuck is going on here? Huh? What's really happening?
I really think it's an underrated movie, and his performance is really underrated too. Yeah, it's great.
I will say there is a particular scene in that movie where he goes to see this musician, and I think that I don't know, 2-minute scene or whatever might be like it's in the running for like my top 2 favorite minutes of cinema. Is when he's in there talking to that old guy while he's playing the piano. Dude, that scene is such a fucking banger. You can watch the whole movie and go, this whole movie is trash, but that scene, ooh. Just kidding.
There's so much going on in that scene too, like layer by layer. You know, you listen to what he's playing on the piano, listen to what he's talking, or saying, that is, articulating, and then Andrew Garfield, how he's digesting that and the questions that he's asking, because it's such like a shitstorm of craziness going on at the same time.
Yeah.
In any other movie, you wouldn't see those three things paired in the way that they are in those 2 minutes, like you're talking about. So yeah, I'm right there with you on that.
Yeah, it's a batshit crazy movie.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun to watch, though, man.
I love that you guys also covered Whiplash and Rock and Roll Nightmare. Whiplash, of course, great movie, fantastic performances, and you guys nailed it on the head whenever you were talking about like how insane J.K. Simmons' character is in that movie overall. He's just a fucking psychopath.
He's top shelf, dude. He's so fucking good.
Yeah.
Which is weird. Like, I've met people like that have that, like, you know, nothing short of perfection is sufficient.
Right.
It's gotta be such a horrible way to live your entire life. But to think that you might get a hold of perfection, you might be able to grab it by the tail for a couple of seconds. Well, that's fucking, maybe it's worth it. I don't know.
Right.
I tend to
land
like
on the side that dragon.
I tend to land on the side of like, just fucking, you know, you get one. Right. Just make it a good ride.
Right. For sure. And of course, we got to shout out our boy Brandon on his appearance on your show. You guys had covered In Bruges and Assassins, which In Bruges is like a friend favorite of all of ours for sure. And then Assassins was a movie that I like grew up with. My dad was into like all the 90s action. And if you have Antonio Banderas in a movie, that was automatic. Sylvester Stallone in a movie, that was automatic. You know,
that was a blockbuster rental for sure. Like,
but it was a horrifically terrible movie. And its practicality and application of the internet was absurd as well. Especially in retrospect.
Computers. I love computers in the late 90s, man. Everybody's like, the internet, what is it? Nobody knows. Let's just say you can fly an airplane with it or like hack a camera from across the world. Let's just say that works.
Right.
I love it. I love the ambition.
Yes. Very, very little research was done at those times too, even in blockbuster movies like that.
Have to. Like nobody
really knew.
Nobody knew. There's a handful of fucking nerds that went to the cinema and went, it's not really how that works. And they went, shut up, Greg. Or
stop ruining the fucking movie.
It's kind of like that nowadays, though, too. It's like, people go to see like Oppenheimer or whatever. It's like, that's not really what happened.
Shut the fuck up.
It's like, all right, man. Yeah. Oh, Oppenheimer, he wasn't that like Rico Suave of a guy. It's like, okay, dude. Like you fucking lived it, you knew him. Like who gives a shit? This needs to be watchable. It's 3-hour movie.
Famously weird penis.
Yeah. Pointy.
Yeah. Op and pointer.
That's where they got the idea for the B2, right?
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's the shape and design. That's a great pickup. Yeah, you got
it. And then another one that I really enjoyed that you guys did was the Nope and Night Beast pairing. Of course, Nope was a movie that I named in our movies in review of the year as one of my favorites of that year. It was my favorite last year.
It was really good. Yeah.
So I was glad to hear you guys sit down and kind of digest that one. And I think like obviously the drawing card for your show is just the pair, like the bat bonkers crazy pairing sometimes that you guys come up with too. And sometimes it's kind of predictable and sometimes it's not, as far as concept or premise, sometimes it's out of left field, which I'm there for the ride.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those I enjoy the most, I think.
Yeah, well, we're trying. Some of them are like, you're like, God damn, you just watch a movie and it's so strange. You're like, what do you put with this?
Right.
I think one of my favorite films that I probably never would have watched otherwise, specifically for the podcast, was Another Round. I think it's 2021, maybe.
Yes.
Mads Mikkelsen's a Swedish, Dutch film, and I never would have seen that otherwise. But I was like so amped to watch it. And we go and we watch this fucking movie, and it's amazing. And then I finish it up, and I'm like, what are we supposed to follow that with? Like, what man has a midlife crisis because he's fucking bored, starts drinking too much, turns his life around, and then loses control, and one of his friends die. It's not a very common trope.
Right. Mads is genius, though.
Yeah, great fucking movie, though.
Oh, yeah.
That was a really fun one as well, though. We recently watched our first ever 10 out of 10 bad movie. So if you guys are into like trash cinema and any
definitely.
I would highly recommend the movie Cyborg featuring Jean-Claude Van Damme.
All right, I'm adding it to my list.
Yeah, we did Upgrade and Cyborg, and those are both fucking phenomenal.
I'm pretty sure I've seen Cyborg, but I can't remember exactly what happens in it.
Well,
Oh, the
Upgrade's
movie
really
is
Upgrade's great.
Yeah, I was like,
It
Upgrade's
was one of my favorite
phenomenal,
movies
too.
that it came out that year. The year that came out, I think it was like 2018.
It was very like under the radar, you know what I mean? But wow, it was
Right.
just phenomenal.
Yeah, my dad was a huge Jean-Claude Van Damme fan too, and like every Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, Time Cop, various
Oh hell yeah,
Universal Soldier,
Yeah.
everything
We've-
that came out we watched.
We did the newer Universal Soldier Once Upon a Time. Oh boy, it's bad.
They remade
like,
it?
Not bad entertaining. Like, yeah, like he's an old man. It's like 4 years old, maybe?
Yeah, I
Oh,
haven't
wow.
seen that.
Yeah,
That's-
it's not great.
Yeah. Boy,
But those first ones, man, they're going to be making an appearance on the show at some point.
hell yeah. And then I know for a little while you were doing the Hollywood Thumb, the movie news stuff. Is that something that you're continuing to do, or what's the story with that?
It's like I want to continue to do it. I like news segments. I like something short, choppy, 20 minutes. 20 minutes in, get a nice refresher, and get out.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a big ask for a guest. So I'm trying to think of a way to kind of reformat it where I can just do it myself, or maybe exclusively make it Patreon content. I'm not entirely sure just yet, but yeah, I would really like to bring it back. It's easy to put together. It takes me maybe 30 minutes to like actually generate the news articles, and then it takes me 20 minutes to record it. Editing is 10 minutes. It's nothing to throw it together, but I just, as unbelievable as this sounds, have not had the time. So
no, I hear you. I get it, man.
Yeah.
Time is of the essence, and it is hard to find when you're a dad and you had a career and trying to manage things around the house and all that fun stuff too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, folks, of course, we're going to have Danny's links in our episode details so you guys can check out his podcast, where to follow him on social media and all that stuff. And we'll give a reminder whenever we round things out at the end of the episode today. Be sure to stick around toward the end of the conversation too. We're going to wrap things up today, and I guess I'll just go ahead and lay out the format for everybody on how we're approaching things today. We're going to give the synopsis, kind of the news and notes on CRONOS to start things off. Once we start hitting that spoiler zone, we're going to let the audience know in the event that they haven't seen this, they want to put it on pause. I'm going to go back and watch it later, whatever the case is. I will say, just as I said with the video drone discussion last week, I am not going to do this movie justice. I'm just going to hit the bullet points of the events that take place. We're going to have a little banter back and forth about what takes place in the movie. And then we're going to kind of give some wrap up ideas and then some more like facts and like random trivia about the movie on the back end that's a little bit more spoiler related as well to kind of round out the discussion. But at the very end of that discussion, in honor of Danny's show, It's Just Two Movies, they do a segment of what you watching. So we're going to do a what you watching with Danny, and we're going to see what he's been watching recently and get some recommendations from him. Maybe he's seen something that we haven't that'll be worth checking out.
I'll send you that stupid fucking soundbite if you want it.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I'll take it. CRONOS is a movie about an antique dealer named Jesus Grease. He stumbles upon the CRONOS device, a 400-year-old golden scarab that, when it latches onto him, grants him eternal youth. In addition, a thirst for blood. As Jesus discovers the secrets of the scarab and his newfound vitality, he's unaware that a dying old man, Dieter de la Guardia, has asked his nephew, Angel, to find the scarab. Dieter and Angel come to find that Jesus will not give up his mortality very easily, even risking their lives and his own. This is one of those weird movies where it kind of did the festival circuit thing. It got a delayed American release. It was done in heats. So I think it's pretty commonly recognized that it came out in 1993, but that's kind of cheating. For the sake of this show and it being its 30th anniversary, we're saying 1993. Technically, it debuted in Mexico in 92 at Thanksgiving time there. And then it went on to have most of its international runs actually in 93. We're talking across the globe. Canadian film festivals, German film festivals, a lot in Europe, Russia as well. So actually, its U.S. runs were predominantly in 94. So again, it kind of details how this movie had this weird release.
This must have fucking blown the doors off of everything else in Mexico in 1992.
I think that it did, and we're going to get into obviously why. I mean, there's facts behind that statement as well, too, with the recognition that the movie received. The movie does have a 94-minute runtime, so it's a little over an hour and a half. I consider it a quick watch.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. I watched it today, so it wasn't bad.
I will say, I think a lot of the criticism, not to jump the gun too much with the movie, is that it starts off a little slow. But things do amp up at a certain point, and I get kind of batshit crazy to a degree. I mean, I've seen crazier, but it definitely takes a turn that, especially if you're not sure what you're watching or what you're getting into, that there is a huge surprise there.
Yeah, the mood definitely shifts substantially.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about some of the cast and crew, as Danny mentioned earlier, and I did as well. This is directed, but also written by Guillermo del Toro. This is actually Guillermo del Toro's first feature film. You may know Guillermo del Toro from Mimic, Devil's Backbone, Blade 2, Hellboy 1 and 2, Pan's Labyrinth, Pacific Rim, Shape of Water, and many more. His director of photography on this was Guillermo Navarro. Guillermo Navarro actually did From Dusk Till Dawn, Spawn, Desperado, Jackie Brown, Stuart Little, Spy Kids, Pan's Labyrinth, Devil's Backbone, and more.
So much for my childhood right there.
So he's actually worked a lot with Robert Rodriguez, Quentin Tarantino, as well as Guillermo del Toro. The soundtrack done by Javier Alvarez. And he actually, oddly, this guy has done nothing in film and cinema at all from this point all the way up until 2010. And then he just did some he's got some sparing credits from that point for a couple of years and hasn't done anything, I believe, since 2018.
Wow, man.
So this guy, literally what he did was this movie, and this is all he's really known for, which is very odd because the score is a nice classic, I think,
absolutely
almost universal horror movie type score.
Yeah.
So he really knocks it out of the park as far as that's concerned, getting the right tone with it. Special effects supervisor, I always think that's important with horror movies to note. It is important to understand that Guillermo del Toro actually established one of the very first special effects companies in all of Mexico. So he already had a foot in the door. Yeah, he already had a foot in the door with all of that. Secondarily, I guess his specified special effects supervisor, he actually got somebody that was a little seasoned in the industry and brought him in. And that's Laurencio Cordero, I believe is how you pronounce his first name, is Laurencio. He actually worked on Predator, Mask of Zorro, and Romancing the Stone were his more prominent, I guess, credits other than CRONOS. Now, Predator.
Huge film, right?
Pretty iconic, right?
I mean, Mask of Zorro is pretty iconic too. That was a
For
pretty big
age,
film for that time, for
big.
its time when it was, a feature.
Yeah, that movie's a fucking banger. That's the one with fucking Antonio and
That's right.
Sir Anthony Hopkins, right?
Yes, it is.
Oh, that's a banger.
Yeah, it's solid. Okay, cast, we've already talked about some of this. Federico Lupi is Jesus Gris, or Jesus Gris, I should say. Ron Perlman is Angel de la Guardia. Claudio Brook is Dieter de la Guardia. Margarita Isabel is Mercedes Gris. Tamara Zanath is Aurora Gris. And Daniel Jimenez Cacho is Tito the Coroner. Now, there are other people in the movie. These are the more prominent people with speaking lines. So I'm not going to go through the full cast and crew. I just identified these people specifically. And if you've already seen the movie, you're going to probably think, why did he bring up Tito, even though he is a character in the movie?
I was going to say,
that is notable. And we're going to get to why it's important for me to detail his credits eventually as well. So there's a little Easter egg for later in the show. This movie was distributed by, at least more prominently in the U.S., October Films. That name might not stick out to you, but it is now an independent subsidiary of Discovery Warner. So kind of a part of the Warner Brothers family before, but Discovery and Warner had the merger. And so it's a part of that huge media conglomerate, which apparently Warner Brothers now, there's rumor that they're going to be bought out by Universal.
Wow.
So that'll be another huge shift in the entertainment industry if that actually goes down.
That would be insane.
This movie's budget was $2 million. They were already $500,000 over the initial budgeted amount, which was 1.5, as it were. So that put Guillermo del Toro personally in debt $500,000. How this movie was predominantly financed was actually through grants and non-for-profits. And then I mentioned, Guillermo himself had $500,000 invested into the movie. So if you look at this movie's budget and what came in on the box office, it's actually a flop. Yeah. However, this was a strong independent circuit and film festival darling. And people don't realize whenever you win at these film festivals, you get checks. And those checks paid off Guillermo's debt. And whenever you get grant money and non-for-profit money, more cases than not, you don't have to pay that back.
Right.
So $1.5 million, he was basically scot-free. All he had to pay back was the $500,000. So the domestic box office in the U.S., this might actually be worldwide. I saw it reported as both, so there's no way it can be the exact same number down to the dollar. $621,000, $392. So that right there got him out of debt, technically. But then he also had the festival money coming in, which helped tremendously. As far as other reception, its rating on IMDb is 6.7, 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, 80% of Google users liked it, and a 3.4 on Letterboxd. So, pretty well received critically. I mentioned it was kind of the darling of the independent film industry as well as the film festival circuit. It actually received 36 different nominations. It had 23 wins. This movie went on to win 9 Ariel Awards from the Mexican Film Academy, essentially, which it won Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay, and Best Original Story. So back to your comment earlier, Danny, this son of a bitch knocked it right out of the park. This actually received the International Critics Week Grand Prize also at Cannes Film Festival, which, of course, is a prominent film festival in Canada. Most people are familiar with that. So there's that.
Yeah. So did well in Mexico then.
Yes. The movie did very well in Mexico. It kind of knocked it out of the park, kind of grand slam as far as awards were concerned, their version of the Academy Awards, Ariel Awards. And then, of course, was the nomination for the Academy Awards for the Mexican contribution in foreign film. It ultimately didn't make the final cut, but it was Mexico's nomination as well.
That's awesome, man. Like, it's exciting that, like, did you say this was Guillermo del Toro's first film?
First feature film.
What a fucking banger, man.
Right.
I mean, like, he has really become, like, long-term probably one of my top 5 favorite directors because he can just do so much with nothing.
Absolutely.
It doesn't need to be a big budget film. I would say probably conservatively, one of my top 10 favorite films of all time is probably Pan's Labyrinth.
For sure.
So he's one of my favorite directors, man. I mean, just a guy just does a bang up job at telling a story.
Yeah, I mean, he's an incredible storyteller. His attention to detail and just his vision and how he applies it, I think, are his strongest suits. So Guillermo, by 26, actually had already established his first special effects company in Mexico. He graduated from the University of Guadalajara. He published a book about Alfred Hitchcock, and he had directed several short films before even doing this first feature film of his. And then actually, CRONOS was his thesis in college that he wrote, and then he went on to redraft it for 6 to 8 years following graduating college, and then turned it into his first feature film. So this is actually something he kind of toyed with for years while he was accomplishing all this other stuff I just mentioned.
So it's like his project. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fucking cool, man. I like that.
Yeah,
that output's insane, man. It's incredible. Guillermo del Toro originally was inspired whenever he wrote his thesis by the classic movie monsters of the Universal Universe. So you're talking like 1930s and beyond, things like, Wolfman, Dracula. He was very fond of A Creature of Black Lagoon, just anything within that universe he was attracted to. And I think if you are familiar with his work, obviously Creature of Black Lagoon is one that stands out because Shape of Water.
Right.
And the creature in that is heavily inspired by that in particular. Guillermo's kind of noted for always in his films, his creature features, that the creatures themselves are humanized. And that's with intent because he tries to do a realistic adaptation. And if this were real events, these humanoid creatures, if you will.
Like the shape
Monsters.
of water. Like the
Exactly.
shape of water. If that were to practically happen, that lady's going to fuck that fish.
Absolutely. Yeah, that seems very, very
I would.
reasonable and logical.
100%. I know he would. And so does Guillermo del Toro. We both know.
That,
and that's
you
why
saw that
he's
fin
like,
he was packing.
Yeah, right. And he's like, okay, the movie's not about that, but it would be, we would be amiss to not even bring it up, like people are going to know.
I mean, it's the wild hog in the room.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obvious.
Yeah.
That's a low-key big hog on that feller. Guillermo was, of course, a huge fan of Ron Perlman in particular, and he actually wrote Ron Perlman a letter, whose career was pretty much in the tank at this point, telling him his desire to actually have him a part of the film, and he had this part for him.
Yeah.
And it's really funny because Ron Perlman did not speak Spanish. He only spoke English. This was a Spanish-speaking film. So Guillermo del Toro changed the script to have some English speaking in it from some of the other actors. So Dieter and Jesus both speak in English, a couple lines throughout the film.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously Ron Perlman's character, I'd say 75% of his dialogue's in English. But it actually ended up changing like the dynamic of the character, as well as his overall disdain for his situation and everything. It kind of added a complexity to his character that otherwise would have been two-dimensional. So it really actually worked out for the film.
Right. Absolutely.
Ultimately. Ron Perlman credits Guillermo with the rebirth and revival of his career specifically for this role. And that is why that they are such great friends and constant collaborators to this day. And Ron Perlman even took a pay cut in the midst of making this film to help accommodate them running over budget too, which he didn't have to do. And he was the only name really in the film, at least American, that is.
I would say long-term that paid off for him big time.
Oh,
yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah. He's still the best Hellboy. If they're like, we're
100%.
gonna make another Hellboy movie, he's not dead.
Right.
Just go get him. He doesn't really have to fight a monster. It doesn't matter if he's old. He's still the best Hellboy.
I think he's been actually consulted about that, and he's just like, yeah, that's kind of what he said. He's like, I'm too old for this shit. Get somebody else. Like, I love how like frank he is about stuff.
I wouldn't want to sit and make up that long either.
Yeah, I think he's in his upper 60s now.
That's crazy.
So it's hard to believe. Actually, he might even be older than that.
I was listening to a podcast one time. God, I cannot remember who fucking said it, but they were like, I met Ron Perlman on a plane. Softest hands I've ever touched in my life. Like it was just the palms of his hands were like crafted from the scalp of babies. Just as soft as you could possibly imagine. And every time I see Ron Perlman, that's like the only fucking thing I can think about. It's just those big pillow mitts.
Another hilarious fact about this movie. At some point, Guillermo del Toro befriends James Cameron. Now, Guillermo del Toro is every movie he does, he makes a notebook and he like puts his sketches in there, his ideas, some plot points, makes these almost indiscernible notes about the movie. If you've ever seen one of them, it's kind of crazy. It almost looks like Da Vinci, sketching out his drawings and things in his inventions and contraptions. It's like incredible.
Yeah.
And this is just like so nonchalantly he does this in a notebook, right? He has one for every single piece of work he's ever been involved in. CRONOS is the only one he doesn't have anymore. And the reason is he got drunk with James Cameron, let him borrow it, and James Cameron misplaced it. And he doesn't have any idea where it's at. That's crazy and random.
Right? Yeah,
That's
a good one.
Great, man. You know what, though? If I would have stumbled across that, not a fucking chance in hell I'm going to write Guillermo del Toro and go, hey, man, I have your book.
Oh,
right.
no.
I just sit on it until he's dead, and then that puppy's going on eBay. And then I'll never work again, probably.
It's probably, James Cameron's probably just sitting on it, maybe give it back to him.
I'm sure that's what he's doing with it, yeah.
Speaking of missing things, on the set of CRONOS, the scarabs, all of the original scarabs, there was 4 made for the film, all disappeared before filming wrapped. Odd, right?
That's weird.
Guillermo is very obsessed with like having tokens from his movie sets as well. And he actually has a house just like decorated a lot with that and things he collected from his childhood and so on.
Oh, I bet you it's full of just fucking gramophones and jars full of weird fucking liquid and shit.
That's definitely part of it.
Yeah, I bet
Yeah.
the organ. Well, we'll get to that. I don't want to talk about it yet.
He's got replicas that were made from the original cast in there, but he still doesn't have any of the original 4 from the set. And he does, like, even present day, say that's like one of his most wanted possessions to put in his collection is one of the original scarabs from the set. So it's kind of fucked up. It's his own movie. He can't have something original from it, though.
Aren't actors and actresses pretty bad about like taking stuff from movie sets too, though?
It's
like,
usually
I know
extras,
it's Star Wars,
or like production design people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would be. I'd steal all that shit. Like, down to the salad tongs at craft services, whatever, yoink.
Hell yeah.
I got these from that time I worked on fucking Dusty Bridges and the Sundance Kid.
You know, Harrison Ford jacked himself off with these salad tongs. He said he was tired of using his own hand.
Extra creepy.
I love seeing anything with Harrison where somebody's interviewing Harrison Ford and talking to him about Star Wars, because he's just so high and he fucking hates Star Wars. But dude, to mention Indiana Jones, boy, he just lights up like a kid on Christmas. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's fucking hilarious.
He's definitely a crotchety old man whenever you're talking to him about Star Wars in more cases than not.
He doesn't give a shit, dude. It's so funny, man. It's like probably my favorite thing.
So now we're going to enter kind of the spoiler zone. We're going to talk about things that literally happened in the movie. And so, you know, if you don't want this ruined for you, maybe press pause, check out the movie if you're intrigued by it. If not, listen away. Again, I'm not going to do this movie complete justice. We're just going to do summaries of scenes so that we can get to the end and we can kind of talk about overall thoughts and that sort of stuff. So films open up with the backstory of the CRONOS device and how it's created. We learned that in 1536 in Veracruz, Mexico, during the Spanish Inquisition, an alchemist and a watchmaker creates the golden scarabs that inject their hosts with the 5th essence and gives them everlasting life. This cuts to the demise of the alchemist who actually made this in 1937 when a vault collapses and impales him. So bad architecture is what ultimately kills this guy, which is kind of
he takes a beam
random,
right through the heart.
Yeah, and coincidentally takes a beam right through the heart.
Remember that point.
Special to remember that, yes. The authorities follow up to the alchemist's residence where they find a person hanging upside down and buckets and bowls of blood in the dwelling, as well as sketches in his books regarding the scarab, but the scarab itself was not found. So this brings us back up to present day at this point where we're introduced to Jesus Gris and his family. Jesus, of course, is an antiques dealer. His wife, a tango instructor named Mercedes, and you meet his granddaughter as well, Aurora. You get the impression that is a loveless marriage initially between him and his wife, and that the granddaughter is more fond of the grandfather versus the grandmother. And as the movie plays out, you can kind of see why. She's kind of his little buddy, follows him around, works with him in the antique shop, so on and so forth.
Yeah, it kind of feels like the wife is kind of trying to hold on to her youth a little bit, and the old man's kind of more like
comfort in his old age, for sure. So we learn that the infamous missing golden scarab is actually hidden in the device, or that device is hidden in the Archangel Gabriel that's inside of the antique shop, after some thieves start to try and tamper with that statue and draw attention to it. So Jesus starts playing with that device, and it latches onto his hand, and it creates a serious cut, startles his granddaughter. Mercedes, his wife, has to mend Jesus's hand and clean up his wounds. And those wounds lead to, he wakes up in the middle of the night with an insatiable itch and a thirst that he can't quench with water. But he starts staring longingly at raw meat and pools of blood. So they're kind of forecasting that there's going to be maybe something to do with blood coming up. You've already seen the pools of blood and buckets of blood and the opening sequences.
I thought it was going to start getting really wild when the itch scene happened. He walks over, he's got the bandage on his hand after getting his hand treated, and he grabs the scissors and starts trying to scratch himself. I thought it was going to start getting really crazy at that part.
He does get very violent with that. Yeah, it was kind of.
I thought he was going to start like digging his hand off. I was like, oh God, here we go already.
I've had that itch, bro.
Oh yeah.
You gotta scratch that motherfucker. You fucking can't do it. You guys, I know that it's not like a global phenomenon, but here in the Midwest, we are fortunate enough to have chiggers. Have you guys ever gotten to chiggers real bad?
Yeah.
Just dealt with that, man. And a bow hunting
make
trip.
You want to just fucking rake your flesh off. So when he's like biting at his hand and shit, I'm like, I fucking feel that, man. He's like making me itchy watching it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's almost like a dog with fleas is the way to. Like, that's how he was acting in the scene. It was just like,
my mind went immediately was the first time that I broke my arm. I was at my kindergarten graduation, and I drove a four-wheeler off the embankment of a pond and flipped it over on myself. When I went to brace myself when I fell, I snapped my arm. And so I had a cast on my arm all summer, like from the start of summer break. And this is back whenever you had to wear casts for at least like 8 weeks.
Yeah, I bet you that bitch stank.
And that son of a bitch stank. Itch constantly. I was constantly sticking like coat hangers and butter knives down there trying to scratch.
You cut it off yourself, or did you actually go in?
This is at the time that I think we went in and had it cut. Yeah.
Bro,
it's so long ago I can't remember for sure, to be honest with you.
I had one on for almost a year. I broke my wrist, and then when they went to go take the cast off, it had fused wrong. So they re-broke it and reset it. Dude, I was so fucking mad.
No.
I bet.
I think I was like in the second grade. She's like, you were trying to attack that man. And I was like, I bet I fucking was. Wrapped me up again. And I mean, dude, it was so fucking creepy because like you finally got the cast off. The one arm is almost fucking atrophied.
Right.
So it's like so fucking thin compared to the other one. So then I just gained 300 pounds and now it's good.
Now everything evened up.
Yeah, it just leveled out.
Well, Jesus wakes up the next day feeling very young and spry. He decides to shave his mustache, his top lip caterpillar off. And his wife is pleasantly surprised with his new youthful look. And immediately there's a sparkle that reignites in her eye.
Oh, yeah.
For Jesus.
She's like, oh, he's got big dick energy now. I'm loving this.
Yes, she looks at him very longingly, to say the least. Eventually we meet Dieter, and we understand that he's living a life of a bubble boy. His specific afflictions are never specified in the film, but you are under the impression that they are terminal, with references to treatment that he says that he has had, akin to like leukemia treatments.
Yeah.
I think at one point in the film too, it like displays like pieces of his body that's been taken out, whether it's pieces of bone.
Yeah, I think he says something like a third of me is in those jars or something like that. And he's like pointing at the jars filled with organs, cancerous organs.
This is one of those times in movies where I don't think it's necessary to tell you specifically. You understand this character's motivations.
Right.
It's not necessary for you to get this long, evil arc backstory on this guy. He's obviously a nefarious individual up to no good. Angel, his nephew, which is Ron Perlman's character, is tasked with retrieving the Archangel Gabriel statue that was left back at Jesus's antique store. While this is all going on, Angel is left in the dark about the importance of the angel and ultimately what his uncle is trying to achieve. Angel does go visit the shop. He purchases the Archangel, but little does he know that the Golden Scarab is no longer in there. The CRONOS device is missing. Angel returns empty-handed to his uncle's displeasure. His uncle, it's obvious he abuses Angel. He hits him in the face with his cane and breaks his nose.
Well, right. So Angel's seeking plastic surgery throughout the movie, right? Like for his nose specifically.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's obviously a gentleman who does not care for his own personal appearance and wants to make improvements upon that. He's also, I think it's alluded to, he keeps having his uncle sign his updated will at least once, if not twice in the movie as well. And of course, you're to assume that he is the benefactor of that will in particular. So he's counting the days until his uncle's demise, specifically. So
I like the way, I don't know if this is deliberate or not, but when he's obsessed with the plastic surgery, I feel like it's very genuine because he's so chummy about it when he's
Yeah.
asking Jesus and his granddaughter. He's like, "What do you think of this nose? What do you think of this nose?" He's like holding up little placards to his nose to like denote
Yes.
the shape of it, I guess.
Right.
And I'm like, you know what, man? I have never, I don't think for a moment even thought about having any sort of plastic surgery for myself. So I don't find that to be a very relatable quality, but he makes it so like, this is just a regular dude. And this is just what he wants to do. That's just what he wants to make him happy. But then later in the film, they show you that he is not like an average man because he puts on his pants 2 legs at a time.
Right. Who does that?
Like, dude, fucking bizarre. Have you ever done it? You ever put your pants on 2 legs at a time? He makes
Maybe
it
out
look
of necessity
way easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, he makes it look way fucking easier, dude. That's like trying to get dressed in one of those tiny ass little tents. Oh god damn, I'd rather just fucking hang dong outside and put my pants on 1 leg at a time. It's crazy.
100%. Well, that's one thing, though, you're leaning into that we need to highlight is the fact that Ron Perlman's character in this, while he is the heel of the movie, or a primary heel of the movie, he's got a likability about him.
And he's a murderer.
Yes, and he like routinely is doing bad things in this movie, and you want to like him because he's such a lovable goof, all while doing this. But I think a part of that is you understand that he's somewhat ignorant, and secondarily that you understand his motivations are clear. Would I call them pure? I mean, I can make an argument that they're pure. They're pure in the sense that they're very transparent.
Right.
But is it virtuous what he's doing? Not necessarily, right?
Right.
But I think there's a relatability to like his motives to a degree, because I think all of us can probably identify maybe somebody that's we perceive as oppressing us or holding us down in our life, even if it's like, I mean, this might be letting some skeletons out of the closet, but family members in particular, right? And
absolutely.
There might be some family members in your history. It's like, you felt like you haven't been able to advance yourself.
Yeah.
With maybe some emotional or family baggage. I think there's some of that lingering there. So there's, again, a relatability to his character that makes you want to like him, makes you want to root for him, although he is against, obviously, our protagonists in the film.
In the beginning, they present him as like cheerful, playful, like he plays with Aurora with the gum, gives her gum. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like they present him as a likable character, which it has a lot to do with the tone shifts, which I don't want to give too much away, so I'll wait.
Absolutely.
To talk about that.
So where we left off last in the events of the movie is that Angel returned empty-handed. His uncle wasn't very happy about it. Meanwhile, Jesus has decided that he is going to latch the CRONOS device back onto his hand. And this has caused his granddaughter to be somewhat scared of him. She's observing this from afar, of course. This is a scene at which he's like on a stairwell. You would liken his behavior to somebody that is like struggling like with an addiction almost. Some of like the ridiculous situation that he's put himself into, even just he's insatiably going after the device. He has to have it. He has to put it on him.
Yeah.
He has to feel that sensation again.
And he knows it's wrong because he's even praying, you know what I mean? Before he even puts it on the stairwell, he's like, Father, protect me, blah, 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 makes his little prayer. So yeah, he obviously knows, you know what I mean?
He knows that it's
a
bad thing, or assumes that it's a bad thing,
right?
You're not supposed to be dipping into that bug jizz. You put it, you give it a little blood, it leaves a little bug cum on you. It's gross. But he's into it though, and maybe he's ashamed.
I would say that there's definitely a level of shame that comes with it, especially initially, post him using the device. One thing we haven't mentioned too. Yes. Yeah. One thing we have not mentioned about the device too is the cuts to inside of the device when it's being used.
Oh,
I love it.
That's some of the best shots in the entire movie. Yeah.
So you're seeing the mechanisms of the device itself, the gears turning the cogs in the machine, but you're also seeing that it is the heart of this machine is a ancient insect, slug, something of that, ilk or wheelhouse in there.
It's weird. It's weird looking directly at a thing when they show it to you and go, here's what's inside this little thing. And you look at it and go, gross. What is it? What am I looking at? You know what I mean? Like there's a bunch of gears. There's a little blood tube. And then you got this like just little squelching, meat slapping piece of shit in here.
Right.
Fucking cool looking though, dude. I love it.
It is.
Love it.
My immediate thoughts went to like whenever you see those blown up pictures of like dust bunnies
Oh yeah,
that look like almost like small little like Stay Puff anteaters in
yeah.
a way. It kind of has a similar structure, I will say, but it's got like this weird like fleshy look to it, like almost like sluggish too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely something like would not have been out of the place in like James Gunn's Slither as
Right.
far as a creature,
Right. Yeah.
you know. So it's definitely conveys a level of discomfort whenever you see it with intent. Jesus returns to work the next day at the shop. He realizes his shop has been ransacked because Angel and his crew went back, tearing it apart, looking for the Chronos device. A card has been left with, I guess, Peter's business address. So that leads Jesus to go visit Dieter and pay him a visit direct. But he is acting as if he has the Chronos device to hand over to him in a shoebox. While he's having a discussion with Dieter, he understands that, or he learns to understand that there's actually instructions for the Chronos device, which he doesn't know anything about this. Jesus doesn't, that is. And Dieter explains to him that there is, and that he needs to give him the device. He tries a varying
He plays mind
offerings
games
with him.
Yeah.
He's certainly playing some mind games. He's tried some, this for that, quid pro quo type stuff, to get the device from him. He ends up taking the box from Jesus, but little does Dieter know that it's a dupe, and it's the lock that they cut off of his shop inside the box, rattling around. It has a similar weight, similar dimensions as the Chronos device, so he gets away kind of scot-free, but Dieter announces over, and I guess he lives on a construction site, is the best I can articulate where they're located at.
Yeah, they're building something at the beginning of it, but it looks like a paper press to me, like
industrial plant of some kind.
Right.
Yeah.
Like an underdeveloped industrial place, except for like his living quarters and area specifically.
Yeah. It looked like they were welding on some machinery when they first cut to that building in the first couple scenes. And it almost looks like there's some kind of big like rolling machinery or press machinery or something.
You know what I like about his like apartment in that building, the old man.
Yeah.
I have a theory, and I haven't sat down and gone, I'm going to watch all of Guillermo del Toro's movies and prove myself right. But I watched 3 or 4 in relatively short succession, and I was like, this dude has a fucking gramophone and a jar full of weird shit in every fucking movie.
Yeah.
And so far, that I'm right twice in that same room. Like, you just walk in, boom, gramophone on the right, jars full of weird shit on the left, bing, bang, boom. And it's
like
just
signature.
This weird... He's got like fucking 12 humidifiers in there and all those other angels like hanging in bags from chains. What the fuck is that? You don't have a shelf? You can tell he's a weird fucking guy.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, he's got kind of like a Howard Hughes element to him.
Almost like like an evil villain kind of. Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Where we left off last in the story, Jesus has gone to a New Year's party where he is getting a little face-sucking sesh with his wife. Of course, he does this after he has to run to the bathroom and use the Chronos device again before going to the party. He fits into a suit that used to not fit him anymore. There's just a lot of things that is feeding into the fact that he is de-aging on some somewhat rapidly level, right?
Yeah.
And so he's dancing all night with his wife. They're hanging all over each other. You can see that the granddaughter starts to become distant to her grandfather, who she originally is, very latched onto throughout the movie, because she sees this change in him and it's uncharacteristic of anything that she's ever experienced of him. And he is becoming somewhat, we'll say, egocentric. His world revolves around him now and not so much around her or his wife. There's just a youthful playfulness to him that isn't there before.
Right.
And this is, in my opinion, where the movie starts to take a different turn.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because Jesus gets obsessed with a man across the dance floor, we'll say, who gets a nosebleed, and he tracks him throughout the building and follows him all the way to the bathroom.
Funny enough, when he goes to follow this guy up to the bathroom, the wife asks, "Where are you going?" And he goes, "To get a drink."
Yeah, right.
I always thought that's so funny whenever he says that.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. So they head up to the bathroom together, and Jesus is just kind of playing around in the bathroom, like he's washing his hands and that sort of thing. And if you're like just watching everybody's bathroom demeanor, it's like absurd the whole time.
Yeah.
Like it's bad bathroom etiquette. Like there's guys going to the bathroom not washing their hands. This guy's bleeding all over the sink, like
all over the counter,
all over the counter, and didn't clean it up, didn't really make an attempt to.
Just kind of wipes himself off, and
Jesus immediately goes after the pool of blood, like he's trying to lick it up or suck it up. You see, he's trying to like play with it to do something with it, and then a guy comes out of the bathroom stall, doesn't wash his hands, basically has his shit all hanging out still buttoning up and tidying up. And goes over and starts like splashing water to try and clean it up with his bare hands and doesn't wash his hands.
Yeah.
Like everything about this scene is disgusting. Hygiene.
Fucking sicko, man. That guy,
right.
That guy. If I was in the bathroom with that guy who's like, who bled all over the sink and is just like scooping water and using his bare hands to push another man's blood into the sink, low key, I'm going to strangle that guy to death in that bathroom. And just rid the world of that dude. What are you doing, bro?
Absolutely.
Don't touch that. Have you never had, like, where's your mother? Your mother is rolling over in her grave right now.
For sure. For sure.
Dude, that whole bit when he's doing that, I'm like, ugh. He's still doing it. He's touching it so much. Ugh.
Yeah, like it lingers a little beyond the, like it's not acceptable at all, but it even lingers, I feel like, a point beyond acceptability as well, too. That's what makes this whole transaction very uncomfortable. So his piss poor job of cleaning the place up, too, he splashes a bunch of the blood onto the floor, and I think there's a trail left anyways. And this is where you get Jesus on the ground licking blood off of the floor. So you know that you are dealing with something very odd. What's going on with Jesus outside of him acting like a drug addict whenever he's got the CRONOS device on him.
Also, bad bathroom etiquette. You don't lick the floor.
For sure.
Everybody knows that.
For sure.
Gross.
I had to take my chances with that counter before the floor. That watered down blood.
I'll take a hard pass on both, personally.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm saying we had to be a choosing guy.
Everybody knows if you're going to consume anything in a bathroom, it's got to be off the back of the toilet. Boom, got him.
Yeah.
Jesus gets knocked out, and you don't know why. It's kind of an off-camera kick. Well, turns out here we are again with Angel, and they are cliffside, and I believe Jesus has an old, is it a Rolls-Royce vehicle, I believe? If I remember correctly, his vehicle that he had?
I cannot remember what it is.
Yeah, I think it's an old Rolls-Royce.
Oh, was it a Rolls? Damn, that's
I believe it was.
It was nice. It was a nice whip. I remember, like,
yeah, for sure. Right. And Angel's trying to beat the ever-living piss out of him, find out where the CRONOS device is at. He's not giving up any information. And basically, Angel's like at his wit's end. Like he's like wearing himself out, beating the shit out of him. So he throws him in the car and he decides, okay, I'm going to push him off this cliff. Well, that would be a reasonable outcome, I guess, if you're trying to kill somebody in most situations. But little does Angel know what he's dealing with specifically. It's funny because Angel's character like continually bungles things throughout the movie in general, as it is too. He couldn't even successfully push the car off the cliff. Like he hangs the car off the cliff, and this gets into like the goofy like likability of Ron Perlman's character, where he has to get down in the 3-point stance and like tackle the back of the car to get it to go over the edge. Finally, is kind of ridiculous. Right?
Yeah, that was gold. Whenever he got down in the stance, I about lost it. I about fell out on my chair.
Yeah, very very campy. Now, Jesus dies, or at least we think he dies, as a result of falling off this cliff in the vehicle. Angel goes back to tell his uncle, okay, he's dead now. And the uncle is very persistent that, like, you don't know if he's dead. Was he impaled by the heart? And he's like, well, I don't know if he, crashed in a car. Of course he's dead. I didn't see him breathing.
Well, it is important to note that
matter.
His character also actually is like in the dark about the CRONOS device throughout the whole film. Like apparently his uncle has not really even told him why he's looking for it or whatever. So
doesn't know there's a good chance that he's like a zombie, eternal being, vampire, bug man.
He don't know what he's fucking with.
And actually, I think it's in this scene that he actually learns why his uncle actually wants that device, because Jesus tells him.
Yeah, he thinks it's going to make him live longer.
He thinks it's going to make him live longer is the short answer that he gives him, and he starts busting up laughing, and that's not something that he wants his uncle to do either. So you have to understand Ron Perlman's character's motive, and also why pushing him off the cliff, and this being the end of the CRONOS device, is the solution for everybody. Things follow up with Angel having to go to the funeral, as well as the coroner, to confirm Jesus' death. While at the coroner, there are some off-camera shoots where you are following the coroner himself, and I mentioned him earlier. I believe it was Tito, the coroner.
Yeah.
And this is where you're introduced to him and his character. Jesus is in the casket at one point, which is like the cheapest wooden casket I've ever seen, but he's also being cremated. So whenever they go to set him up for the cremation, the belt isn't working, the gas line's leaking, and all these issues are taking place. So this guy's dicking around, and it's created all this time for which you learn that Jesus' character has escaped the coffin at this point. So he has escaped going into the furnace. Everybody assumes that he's inside of that casket and it's on fire and everything's done. Ron Perlman's character, Angel, shows up. He sees it on fire. He thinks this is all over with, right?
He thinks he's good as gone.
Yeah, he thinks he's gone at this point. So Jesus is on the street living like a homeless man. He's got his funeral tux on backwards. And he is trying to make his way back home. He calls home. Mercedes answers the phone. She hangs up on him, thinking somebody prank calling her. Oddly enough, he shows up at his home at one point into the welcoming arms of his granddaughter, who's waiting on him with a dry towel. And she takes him up to, I guess, kind of like her little play or escape area on the roof of the complex that they live on.
Yeah, it's like an old abandoned building. And it's like full of toys and old couches and weird stuff.
And this is where you start to learn that Jesus has definitely undergone a change since coming back. The light starts to break in and it starts to burn his skin. She cleans out her toy chest for him to sleep in, almost like a sarcophagus.
Right, so you're playing on that vampire monster stuff again.
So now we are into, if you're kind of an astute film watcher at this point, you're catching on to this might be a vampire movie, right?
I love a good. I can see why every like 20 or 30 years vampires just like culturally catch fire.
Right.
Cool idea when done properly.
Sure. Yeah. And this was definitely a new wrinkle to the whole mythos and and how it had been done. Jesus and his granddaughter go to Dieter's headquarters. And now I don't think that Jesus knew that his granddaughter was following him. It's revealed that she was following him, and he has no other choice but to take her with him. And so, again, putting her life in danger in the process of all these crazy events taking place. So he gets up to Dieter's, we'll say, flat, where he lives at here on this industrial complex. And they're basically forced into, like, attacking him because he's like trying to cause them harm, and everybody's at each other. He stabs Jesus even, and so that's of course a problem. And the granddaughter actually strikes him, Dieter, with the cane and knocks him down initially. And you think Dieter's like down for the count, and at this point, Ron Perlman's character Angel, he had got, I believe like a secret call from his uncle in the midst of these transactions taking place.
Yeah, he had like a secret alarm. He wasn't getting
a response back. So yeah. So Ron Perlman's character comes up to his aid, and he's not getting a response. Finally comes up. He realizes that his uncle's like in the process of dying. Finds out his uncle isn't actually dead, and he finishes the job himself because it's his time. So then at this point, it is Jesus against Angel. And so Angel realizes that Jesus and the granddaughter are there. They, for whatever reason, they think the logical thing is to escape up on top of the roof, which is like my only problem with this movie. It seems a little silly, especially at the time of night that they're there. It's not like there's like, security and force going to chase them down or anything like that.
He only knows how to leave by going downstairs.
Right.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
How he even knows it's...
Yeah, he's been there
how he even
multiple
knows
times.
It's an option.
I don't know. He must know it's the third act.
There you go. It has to be extremely dramatic. So this ends up to like kind of a fight scene up on top. You're more and more noticing. I should have mentioned this earlier too. Jesus' appearance, his skin is starting to peel. It's rotting off of him. He's got like an under layer of skin that's starting to shine through. That's white.
Yeah, old LaGuardia or whatever his name is, like peeled some pieces of flesh off of him when they were having a little tussle.
Yes. And so it's obviously starting to alter his appearance. But if you call back to the opening sequence of the film, wherever the alchemist died and he was impaled, his skin was white.
Right. He looks like a monster too.
In the final sequences. Yeah. Yes. So there's some continuity there with, what happens at certain points. And so this basically goes into the final act where Jesus and he actually tackles Angel's character off to the roof to save the granddaughter who's kind of like in peril on the side of the building. And they crash through and onto the ground. And the granddaughter tries to use the CRONOS device to revive the grandfather back from the fall, which initially works, but he sees the granddaughter with blood and a cut on her, and he starts to get that urge to go after her.
There's a trade-off there, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's when there's an awakening with the character, and he realizes, I need to end this, and he crushes the CRONOS device, also killing the insect, slug, whatever creature inside of that, and ending the whole thing. The film wraps with him dying at home, lovingly in his bed with his wife and his granddaughter at his side. So there's a lot of key takeaways from this movie. First and foremost, of course, we've already mentioned it. Surprise, you watched a vampire movie, and you may not have realized you were about to watch one, or maybe you didn't realize that you actually watched one. I couldn't tell you the first time I saw this film. I've seen this film, for me to watch any film more than once is kind of rare, to be honest with you, just because I'm always trying to find new films, and I really have to love a movie to watch it more than once. I've seen this movie a handful of times. I did rewatch it again this week, and I know probably it wasn't until I was in my late teen years, early 20s that I realized some of the major things happening. I thought it was loosely a vampire story, but I didn't realize that this was Guillermo del Toro's attempt at doing his own version of it, a straight up vampire story.
Yeah, and I loved how he tied in the multicultures to it, the whole scarab stuff with ancient Egypt, and the Book of the Dead and revitalizing life and stuff like that, and then tying that into vampires and monsters. I think that's genius. I could definitely see how this could be his thesis and his project feature.
If you saw trailers of the movie leading up to the movie too, it's not completely obvious that that's what this movie is about. It's certainly a fresh tale on vampire lore. And the whole reason for this, and I teased this earlier, was Guillermo del Toro was really making this his antithesis of what gory depictions of monsters were out there and inhumane versions of monsters that were taking over in the 80s and early 90s. He wanted to do kind of a counter programming and do a humane take on a monster and, show the human element to these situations that could play out in these theoretical worlds. So, again, a very fresh take on the vampire story.
Yeah, I mean, he gave the monster a family and a story, you know what I mean? So it was beautifully done.
Great job at it, man. He has a way about making characters warm and then bringing the shitty parts out about just regular humanity. Take Pan's Labyrinth. Who's the real monster in Pan's Labyrinth? It's the guy, the soldier, the colonel. I don't remember what his fucking name is. Well, what are the monsters like? Well, there's the giant toad, but he's just an animal, just a regular ass animal. The everything else that has a little bit of humanity is maybe it's doesn't care what happens to you essentially, but it's not trying to hurt you. It might not have any skin in the game as far as where you're at, but it's not malicious deliberately. So in this movie, you've got who's the real fucking monster? Really, it's just the regular human man who's directing Ron Perlman to go fucking kill the dude or whatever. Right. But even though the human person that we've spent all this time with and really got to Jesus Grist, he's
technically the monster.
He is the monster, yeah. So
Right.
he's got a great way about creating these warm, horrific characters, like in The Shape of Water. That's your best
Exactly.
supporting role is that fucking fish man.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And then adding to the complexity of what Guillermo del Toro does and he brings to the table is his intent of naming characters in this film and what those names may mean to not only the story, but what the names mean in general. Dieter is actually a name that means army of people. So whenever you look at him and his character in the film, he's a guy that demands respect. He is a presence. He's a force to be reckoned with. I think that name is very befitting of his character. Angel, of course, he's the guardian angel of his uncle, and a lot of this film is there's a lot of angel tropes and things of that ilk throughout the movie as well. Gabriel, the guardian angel in particular, that's used to hide the scarab inside of it. There's a collection of Gabriel angels inside of the apartment. There were ones that he falsely retrieved previously, thinking that the scarab was inside of. That's the reason he has all those angels inside of his apartment. Dieter does. So angel is a running theme throughout that. Of course, Jesus Christ. Now, this might be the most complex of choices with intent. There's an homage to Jesus Christ, of course.
Well, I think
Get
the
outta
script
here.
even the script leans
Syllables,
into that, right?
Names, right?
Whenever he goes to visit Dieter, doesn't he start talking about insects and
Yes.
and comparing them to the
Walking on
resurrection,
water.
and walking on water and stuff like that. So
I believe, now I could be wrong, but I believe the longest lived insect is just a cockroach, which is weird because they are cockroaches are termites, but cockroaches play a big role in this, and
Yes, they
it
do.
looks like that statue. When they do an inspection of it, it looks like it's had termite damage.
Yeah, and it also has cockroaches like pouring out of it at one point initially at the beginning of the film whenever they crack the statue open.
right,
The scarab itself is kind of a beetle, but one could say it's roach-like.
right, yeah.
Most unbelievable part is that the guy didn't notice all those cockroaches in this antique shop because he would have been freaking the fuck out.
No question. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Jesus Christ, back to his character. He had a similar trajectory of Jesus Christ in general. He had similar wounds. He had the rebirth 3 days after his death. He achieved everlasting life, technically. And then he dies for the greater good as well. So all of those...
Self-sacrifice to save humanity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. All of those themes are embedded in his character. Aurora, the granddaughter, my daughter's name, goddess of the dawn. So, of course, this is very prominent and sticks out to you in your mind, knowing this now, looking back on the film, in the scene at which she is taking care of her grandfather in his rebirth state, if you will. And the dawn comes in and those rays of light start to cut through the room. Not only just do you get that visualization of that, but secondarily, she's like the light of his life as well.
Right.
So I think the name was chosen with purpose. There's also some extreme film compositions used and color palettes from scene to scene. So think about the coldness and the blue and gray hues of Dieter's living quarters in particular. Now, Guillermo has said that he did not do this with any sort of intent in his films, but they are homages and tips of the cap to his favorite Italian film auteurs, people like Mario Bava, Argento, which those guys use pretty obvious color palettes with intent and not necessarily for any sort of reason in their films too, just because they liked it visually, aesthetically. It was their signature look or whatever. I would argue differently. I think that there was a subconscious choice made, even though Guillermo has said that he did not do this with any sort of intent. Again, and I go back to the example of Dieter. He's a cold character, right?
Right.
You're going to want to use cold colors and hues and settings to help sell that point of his character. He lives his life dully in gray and cold blue tones,
Right.
Whereas, especially whenever you're initially introduced to Jesus and his family, that they have a very lively life, and there's a lot of colors, a lot of reds and bright tones.
Right, and in the city itself, there's a lot of Christmas lights up, and
right.
A lot of bright lights and sounds, and yeah.
So I
Even
think
though it's
that
like his marriage is a little lacking or whatever, like him and his
right,
wife or him and this old lady are little on the outs, you can tell that there's still abundant love in their household.
Right.
yes, 100%. And another good point to bring up. The film is obsessed with time. This whole film is about people trying to get more time. Um, Jesus Grease is achieved technically everlasting life, even though he voluntarily took that from himself. Dieter is constantly trying to achieve everlasting life. And Ron Perlman's character, Angel, is obsessed with it being his time now. Also, this time point is sold. If you look at the antique shop, it is littered with clocks on purpose. There's a lot of cuts to clocks throughout the movie. Whenever they're at the New Year's Eve party, of course, you hear the countdown. There's a man in a clock costume. Whenever Jesus goes back to his family, there's cuts to the family clock and it's striking, and you're hearing the gongs of the family clock. So again, the movie is obsessed with what time we have, right? So another thing to take note of if you've seen this movie, or if not, and you're going to go watch it. Another fun little fact I took away from the movie, which I regret not doing with Videodrome last week, is the kill count. There's a total of 10 kills in this movie, so that means that somebody dies every 8.2 minutes.
Really? It doesn't seem like that.
It doesn't seem like that, but that is the case. Archangel Gabriel statue. Of course, in biblical texts, this, of course, is one of the angels of the apocalypse, but it was also Gabriel's responsibility to announce God's will. So I thought that was kind of telling, considering that the CRONOS device was hidden inside of it.
Inside of Gabriel. Right.
Which technically gave the abilities of biblical Jesus Christ to Jesus Gris as well.
Right.
So, little cheeky.
I didn't look any of this up. I just watched the movie and was like, oh, maybe. I pondered a guess. So the CRONOS device, I know CRONOS is Roman or Greek. I think Greek. It was like one of the Titans. He cut off his dad's fucking nuts. And then he ate his babies. And then somebody swapped Zeus with a stone. Is that right? Does that have anything to do with this? Because this doesn't, the CRONOS device in itself, because I did think about this. I'm like, that's...
CRONOS, the key tie is that CRONOS was the Greek god of time. So again, this all goes back to the time thing.
Okay, gotcha.
He was also a Titan who overthrew his father, which was Uranus. And his mother was Gaia.
Yeah. He separated like the Earth and the afterlife, or whatever the deal was. But yeah, he cut his dad's nuts off. I do remember that.
Yeah, castrated him with a flint. Crazy. You did have that right.
While he was sleeping.
Yeah. Did Zeus come out of his head or something? Like, there's something there. Like he ate a stone, or he didn't eat a stone, and Zeus came out of his head. I don't fucking know. Something like that happened. But I can't draw any conclusions. The CRONOS device seems like a very, very specific naming convention for that device.
Yes, for sure. And Zeus is the son of CRONOS.
Nice.
So yeah, you're landing them, Mr. Danny. You're getting those references.
Fucking yeah. Still the trap of fucking useless shit nobody cares about. But what is that? What would that, with that deliberate nomenclature with the CRONOS device? Surely that has got something to do with that. But I guess you say he was the god of time, so that's the thing. I guess I was looking for more there, but still, 100% delivers on all of it.
And you got to think it's just playing, like I said earlier, it's playing into so many different cultures, like ancient Egypt with the scarabs, Greek with CRONOS, the Spanish alchemist in the Inquisition, all that stuff. I love.
Well, a lot of like vampire lore will even take you back. I mean, like Vlad the Impaler specifically is a huge jumping off point for anything lore vampire wise. However, some of the like stories and things have been pulled from like even Egyptian mythology,
right?
And ideas about the afterlife. Yep. And so I think Guillermo did a good job of like tipping his cap to all of these things over time that's kind of recognized this in the lore.
Yeah.
and tying it into his film too.
It was definitely one of the most interesting takes on a vampire, anyway, in my opinion.
I'd mentioned this earlier. Tito the coroner reprising his role was very important because there is a sequel to CRONOS. It is a standalone sequel film, so that means that it's not like heavily tied to this. There's not a lot of repeating characters, but the one repeating character is Tito the coroner from CRONOS to this, and it's called We Are What We Are. It's a 2010 movie. It's the 2010 We Are What We Are. There is another movie called that came out after that. Look for 2010's We Are What We Are.
And I will say about Tito is he doesn't have a lot of screen time, but he is such a big presence.
He is a scene stealer. Yeah. Yes, he does have charisma.
He for sure is.
Yeah.
Man, they really missed the mark on that. They should have called it like Too Crone to Bone or something. You know what I mean? With like Roman numeral 2. Too Crone
Electro
to Bone.
Boogaloo 2.
Yeah, boom. Cruise control.
I kind of made allusions to this earlier. This film is an allegory for addiction. I wanted to bring that up because I think there's another great movie that came out this year that is also, it's not the big takeaway I took from it, but is also an allegory for addiction, and that is Talk to Me. If you have not seen Talk to Me,
I have not.
I highly recommend it. It is definitely in my top 5 movies that I've seen this year, new movies that is, and probably in my top 3. I really enjoyed that movie. It's really fun.
I'm on the fence if I want to rent it, because I can rent it right now. I go in the other room after we're done here and rent it and watch it. But I think I want to buy it, but I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah,
is it?
You'll love it.
Yeah,
you will love it.
I've heard and read nothing but incredible things about it.
I think I listened to one other like movie related podcast that's by a couple of Australian guys, and that's largely an Australian film, I think.
Correct.
And they just rant and rave about like it might be like one of the best things to ever come out of Australia. So
awesome, dude.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to watching it.
Good for the Down Under boys.
It is a good fresh take on kind of a Monkey Paw type synopsis, and I can't recommend it enough. It's a great film. My only complaint with it is petty, and I will not share it until you've seen it because I'm curious of what your thoughts are.
Mine's marketing. They should have just called it Talk to the Hand. It's bad.
It seems like a missed opportunity.
It's 90s enough to work. You know what I mean? The kids are into that now. They're all like, whoa, YOLO this, and I love air pump Jordans. You know, that's what they like.
You're right.
The sneakerheads.
Real pulse on the youth. We need you to be our youth correspondent.
and now we go to Danny with our youth correspondence.
Listen, fam, don't get caught in the crib lacking and think that's my vibe.
Danny, what do we miss with this film? Anything prevailing in your thoughts?
Okay. So, I mean, long story short, yeah. Goofy vampire take. I wouldn't say goofy. It's not. That's the wrong descriptor for it. It's
unconventional.
Good. Yeah, it is unconventional. Thank you. I like. Boy, I like a lot of this, and the things that I don't care for, the shortcomings that it has, are no fault of anybody in production. All the acting's great, storytelling's great. I was entertained by it. Guillermo makes everything feel like I'm on vacation in Mexico and I'm really drunk and I sit next to an old Mexican guy and he's like, "Let me tell you a story," and he like tells me this fucking tale that I've never heard, and I'm like, "That's fucking crazy, dude. Will you come on my podcast?" And he won't do it. But there's such a I know movies are stories and they're all made by storytellers, but his have a Princess Bride kind of somebody's telling me a story. And it's not, I don't think it has anything to do with the narration, although there is a bit of narration in this film, done very tastefully. Yeah, I mean, as far as like thematically, I don't think there's anything you guys didn't cover. Basically, the only problem I have is really the roaches on the roaches in the antique shop, because that guy would be freaking the fuck out. That'll put him out of business
for sure.
Right.
Well, and also like the daughter starts whacking the roaches, or the granddaughter starts whacking the roaches like with a newspaper, and he's like, "Oh, don't! You're just gonna make them more mad." It was like,
Right.
He's like not
And
wanting
don't
to
entice
smash
them. Don't entice the bugs by killing them. Yeah.
Yeah, they play a little fast and loose with some of their insect facts when he's like, everybody knows that a bug can just live in a rock until somebody disturbs it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, a spider and an ant can live under a rock for 200 years undisturbed, I think was the exact line, which I'm like, I didn't actually know that.
A snail can like sleep for a fucking really long time, dude. Did you know that about snails? It's a retarded amount of time. It's like
I know that
20 something years.
Bees can be frozen because I know in physical science in high school we tied fishing string to a bee and it thawed out and come back alive and we could walk the bee around the room.
Oh, let me tell you a cool science trick you can do for your kids. Get a Solo cup or whatever. If you have a housefly in your house, catch that bitch under a cup, slide a piece of paper under it, fill the cup with water, and then shake it a little bit so he gets wet. Take the back of a spoon and just drown that motherfucker. Drown him for 10 minutes. He will be dead. Put him on a paper towel, cover him in salt. 8 minutes later, he'll just crawl out and fly off.
That's insane.
That's wild.
Yeah, it is wild. I've said that one.
That is
Dude, that'll fuck your kids up if you be like, you've heard of the Bible, right? Wait till you see this shit. Like, oh my God, you're a witch doctor.
That's how they did it.
Did aside from
it was just salt. Yeah, they just
Jesus Christ, one salty bitch.
Oh God. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's fun trick though. Insects are weird, man. They're weird critters.
Definitely. So we're going to move on to our last segment of the show, and we're going to pick Danny's brain about what he has watched recently. Let's get some recommendations from Danny. Or maybe not recommendations.
Yeah, I knew we were going to do this, and I still didn't prepare anything. I've been reading, I know you're like, what have you been watching? And I immediately have gone to reading. But I've been reading Broke His Brain by Carl Sagan. Really enjoying that. As far as a good watch, I checked out some of that Chucky series. Pretty good.
I've heard that.
Yeah, pretty good. I was expecting nothing. I was like, I'll check out one episode and probably turn it off just to see what it's like. No, pretty good. Pretty good show. Let's see, this week on the podcast, I'm covering Infinity Pool, which I think we talked about a little bit.
Have you already seen it?
Yeah. I had interesting, we utilize Redbox a lot just because it's $1 and we're in that part of town anyway.
Right.
So this is one I rented on Redbox, and this rarely happens to me, but the DVD was fucked up. So I watched the whole movie, was really into it. Last 17 minutes, nothing.
Shit.
I couldn't finish it. So I was like, shit. And then I saw it on streaming. And I was like, you know what, man? It's kind of spooky season or whatever. I was like, I really want to finish that movie. I don't know how, where it is on my scale of being good or not. But I'm going to make Birdman sit through it too, so we can, so I can wrap it up and we can talk about it.
Nice.
So we'll be doing that shortly. What else I did watch something else really fucking cool recently. Oh, I watched a couple of scary movies that were pretty good. I watched, that new one on Hulu that everybody liked.
No one will save you.
Yeah, something like that. I watched the new film on there with Lil Rel Howery. It's called The Mill. Are you guys familiar with that? I think it just popped up on Hulu 2 days ago.
No.
Pretty interesting. It's kind of a one-man, well, I guess a two-man show. It's a dystopian future where a Google type company just fucking owns everything.
Oh shit, yeah.
Lil Rel Howery just wakes up in this room with a grain mill, and they're like, hey, you have to push this fucking grain mill or we're going to kill you. But there's no grain in it. And it's just kind of a psychological thriller. Quite good, though. Liked it a lot.
That's odd to hear that he's in a movie like that.
Yeah. No, well,
more of a comedian.
It wasn't only just a good concept, but the execution is really well. I'm not crazy about the ending, but I don't mind it. But I really like the rest of the movie. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Yeah. Apart from that, man, I'm still trying to watch Breaking Bad.
It's tough.
I
You
know
gotta
that's
remember that one.
horrible to say. I'm like, oh yeah, I love stories and movies. I've never seen one of the most critically
Yeah.
acclaimed series in the world.
I haven't finished Breaking
It's
Bad,
good.
so I'm right there with you.
It's top 5
Yeah.
series for me all time for sure.
Yeah. I'm last season. I'm about halfway into
Well,
it, but
You're close.
yeah, I know. I'm really, really enjoying it though. Man, as far as other stuff, I don't think I've really been listening to much. If you're into educational podcasts, Stuff to Blow Your Mind has a 3-part series on necromancy that came out in the last week.
Nice.
And they take a look at it like from like culturally and from as
Definitely.
far back as we can go. They talk about ancient Mesopotamian stuff, and it's all
That's awesome.
like through
Awesome.
the lens of science. They're a little on the dry side, but they have really interesting subject matter to talk about. Yeah, good show. Like that one. How about you guys? I think I'm tapped. What else you got?
Oh man. As far as stuff, I've been pretty locked down on watching stuff for the show in particular. I always my like religious weekly listens. I'm like such a fucking nerd, man. I listen to wrestling podcasts mostly, like professional wrestling podcasts. Like Jim Cornette has his own podcast, but he like comments on like political affairs sometimes. He's like ultra liberal, which I love.
Cool.
And one would not expect based on the character they played on TV and where he's from. He's from the South, so you would assume he's just like a neocon or something. He's not.
Right.
He talks a lot of shit about Donald Trump, which I love. And it's just like really entertaining. It's like old man getting in your ass type shit, just like no filter, yelling at the clouds.
Sounds like my kind of
just
podcast.
Going, yeah, I know, it's right up your alley for sure. And then there's a wrestler from the 90s that was really popular, Conan, on WCW.
Oh, I know Conan.
He's the man. He and Disco Inferno have their own podcast together called Keep It at 100, but they cover sports, politics, current news topics, current wrestling stuff going on. They have a fan bag mail question segment where guests could ask them anything about anything. So they'll answer stuff about sports, politics, current wrestling storylines, historical wrestling stuff that they were involved in. People will send in like their shitty takes on like promos and stuff, and it's pretty entertaining. So those are like my weekly listens for sure. That I usually don't miss episodes on those things. If I'm not doing something for our podcast itself. I actually watched the Alien minimal dialogue movie that you were talking about on Hulu. I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. My only problem with it was the finish of it. I got a little cheeky and breaking the fourth wall stuff. I was like, it kind of took away from the overall tone of everything that they delivered up to that point, in my opinion. But got to appreciate it for what it is. And a good, short, quick watch. I think it was like an hour and 25 minutes, maybe maximum runtime.
Pretty breezy. And they're right to the punch. You know what I mean? They're like,
I'm into that now.
You get this girl, everybody hates her, she must suck. And then boom, aliens.
Right. And they do kind of the traditional gray alien thing, which I'm kind of tired of. There's a few different little spins you haven't seen. The articulations of joints and some of the telepathy type things that they do. There are some pretty wicked. What I do like about it, there seems to be like a different hierarchy of grays, though, in this universe. Like there's different types with different sizes and abilities and things. So
give me those.
That was kind of fascinating.
Give me those little skittery spider guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Fuck that. Yeah. Fuck that regular ass humanoid fucking whatever, man. I'm calling your evolutionary chain sounds like bullshit to me.
Right. The funny thing, this is a spoiler point if you haven't seen the movie, by the way, that I fucking loved is whenever they like peep into her mind though, and they see like how fucked up like the events of her childhood are. They're just like, we're gonna just kindly put you back. You know,
is it because
like,
you murdered your
touch
friend?
This. It's like we're not touching this one.
No,
she's fucked up enough as it is.
Yes, we'll look into your brow. Oh my God, that was your friend.
Get out that was fantastic.
No, that was a pretty fun movie, man. I like that quite a bit, actually.
I go on my YouTube rabbit holes. I don't know if you ever do this, Danny, but like I'll get on a jag of like wanting to learn something very specific and niche sometimes. So
like
I'll
how to
see
clean
like
rugs. Yeah,
that does happen from time to time. Yes.
No, I've been on the simulation rabbit hole like the double slit experiment and stuff like that. Like I'm really down in that.
Yeah, I love double
right
slits personally.
Send me some of that shit. I'll check it out.
Oh yeah.
All I ever watch is some dude clean rugs. God, I can't stop watching it though. And
I think my
another
wife
dude that
watches
like
that guy.
another dude that like cleans fucking hooves from animals. You know what I mean? He's like the front doctor for your fucking cows and shit.
Yeah.
He's getting like pus pockets and shit out of there.
Yeah,
God, I fucking
abscesses
glue
and
to it.
stuff.
Yeah, that dude and the carpet guy. I just
Yeah.
make it clean. That's all I want.
I'll tell you what, like I get stuck on rabbit holes of reels of is like the pimple doctor type stuff, or like people get stuck splinters inside of them.
Blackheads.
And
Oh,
you think it's
shit.
just going to be like some little like wood splinter, and it comes out, it's like a freaking 8-inch
Or
long thing
ingrown
that's down
hairs.
their finger.
You ever seen like an 8-inch ingrown hair?
Like every time I stumble upon those, I just go down a rabbit hole of watching those specifically. It's like I just get obsessed with them for whatever reason.
Yep. You're supposed to. We're like, we're hardwired for like, that's got to come out. You know,
Yes.
you know what I mean?
Yes, exactly.
For community grooming purposes, like that's not okay. We got to do something about this.
Yeah, I have to see how this plays out.
Right.
Yeah.
My morbid curiosity. Okay, so let's talk about the best places to follow It's Just Two Movies, just to round things out here. Danny, I know, of course, your podcast is available across all platforms, right?
Yep. Except for fucking Pandora. You guys on Pandora?
We were at one time, but I haven't followed up to make sure that the
I'm
listing's
not sure
staying
on that,
updated.
actually.
Fuck, man. It's the only one that, like, won't verify my shit. It bothers me to no end. I think
What's up
about
with
it
that, I
probably every couple of weeks. I've been doing this shit for, like, 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Just verify it. It's obviously a show that exists. But, anywhere but Pandora. Fuck Pandora anyway. There's too many ads over there. We're most active on Instagram. It's probably the best platform to follow us on. We're also on TikTok, and it's Just Two Movies Pod, and literally everywhere else that is Just Two Movies. Or if you don't have a service that you pay for to listen to shit ad-free, show is always free and ad-free on our website. It's justtwomovies.com.
Awesome. I will say you guys do a great job on your social media, specifically Instagram and TikTok, of putting up reels.
I love your guys'
great
clips,
advertisements.
dude. Like your guys' voiceover, like of movie clips. Like I love that shit.
I hate them. I would like
can
to
sit there and listen to them.
Well, if you guys are listening to us on the audio formats, of course, we're going to have everything in the episode details. Even if you're watching our on-demand video version, of course, we're going to have that in the details down in the bottom. So just hit more on our YouTube channel, and you will see links to jump to It's Just Two Movies content. We want to wrap things up on our end by letting everybody know that next week we're going to be back live on Wednesday, the 18th, with Doug Wicker around 7:30 from Search Party Pictures. We mentioned him at the open of the conversation today. We're going to be covering Evil Dead, the 2013 remake, for its 10-year anniversary for episode 92 of the ATI Podcast. And that one is going to be a fun one, Josh.
Yeah, it should be a blast. I've actually not seen the remake, so I'm excited to actually sit down and watch it. That'd be another new one for me.
It's pretty fun, I think.
Yeah.
It's one of those rare exceptions that the remake holds enough of its own to live in that universe for sure. So
good. Yeah.
I'm very excited about revisiting that one. I actually have not seen it since I watched it in theaters when it came out. So I'm looking forward to rewatching
pretty
it.
fresh for you too.
Yeah. So be sure to stay tuned to everything we got going on ATI Podcast across all social media platforms. We have, of course, got all of our programming announcements out there for the entirety of Season 2. So we've got all of our guest schedule up and our live streaming schedule up until the first week of January of 2024 for everybody. Instagram, we're most active. And, of course, I am Barrett at Barry Insane on Instagram and Twitter, and he's Josh_Joshua Welch on Instagram. And for this week, we are out of time. We want to thank Danny.
Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Once again, and his help covering CRONOS today. And we will wish you all a good night and good luck.
And stay safe out there.
This is Barrett from the ATI Podcast. Each week, Josh and I discuss current events, pop culture, music, TV, movies, politics, sports. Nothing is out of bounds. You can also tune in to learn about rising artists, small businesses. Whether it's music, graphic design, filmmaking, or even a brick-and-mortar mom-and-pop shop, we will be spotlighting folks and their endeavors. Listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Anchor, or anywhere you enjoy your podcasts. Just search ATI Podcast. We would like to thank you for your continued support, and as always, please stay safe out there.
Hey, this is Josh from ATI Podcast. For show updates and news about the podcast, follow us on social media. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/ATI Podcast 22, on Twitter at podcast_ATI, on Instagram at the ATI Podcast, on TikTok at ATI Podcast. DMs are always welcome. Have a question for the show? You can always email us at atipodcastquestions@gmail.com. Stay safe out there.